The Man Who Fell to Earth is a 1963 science fiction book by Walter Tevis about an alien that comes to Earth and acquires vast amounts of money and power and becomes a captain of industry as part of a secret plan to save his people back on his home planet. It is a widely known and highly influential science fiction book that has been adapted several times. The adaptation of this book that most people are familiar with is the 1976 movie called The Man Who Fell to Earth, starring David Bowie. There is also a 1987 made-for-TV movie called The Man Who Fell to Earth, but this version seems to be pretty obscure. I couldn't find a version of it easily watchable online. Hell, I couldn't even find it on Tubi. And funny enough, Google's search AI assistant doesn't even seem to think this movie exists, so oh well. There is also a 2011 documentary called The Man Who Fell to Earth, but that's about the musician Brian Eno and has nothing to do with the story. There was also a 2015 David Bowie jukebox musical called Lazarus, which apparently continued the story of The Man Who Fell to Earth, so it's a sequel and not the same plot as this book. Interestingly, Michael C. Hall, aka Dexter Morgan, played the main alien in the story, and there's videos of him performing the songs to promote the musical when it first came out on YouTube.
Then I used up all my money. I was looking for your ass.
And to confuse things a bit further, there was a 2022 TV show also called The Man Who Fell to Earth that aired on Showtime, and it was not the same story as this book. It was a sequel of sorts, as this older character here is supposed to be that character, the main alien from the story, just 45 years later. All that said, I'm only going to be comparing the 1976 Bowie movie to this book today because I think that one is by far the most well-known. In some ways, I think it is actually more well-known than the original book itself, and despite that, it is still slightly obscure. I think more people know of this movie than have actually seen it. Oh yeah, that's the one where David Bowie played an alien. Right, but have you ever actually seen it? It's pretty weird. It's also a highly influential movie, as a lot of other creative types took inspiration from this. One cool example is that apparently the font for the band Iron Maiden's logo was taken from this movie poster. That's pretty cool. Michael Fassbender said that he was inspired by David Bowie's performance when he was playing the character David in the Prometheus movie. This movie is artsy, ambitious, and very strange. It wasn't highly received when it first came out, but has since gained a cult following. So, enough of me blabbing. Let's get into this. So what's the original book about? It's about an alien known as Thomas Jerome Newton, who comes to Earth from his home planet called Anthea on a secret mission. There's very few of his kind left because his home planet has been ravaged by nuclear war and resource scarcity. The future of his entire race depends on the success of his mission, which is to acquire enough money so he can construct a very large spaceship capable of transporting all the remaining Antheans from their planet to live safely on Earth. He admits it's a long shot, but it's their only chance at survival. Newton does this by going into business with a patent lawyer named Oliver Farnsworth. After presenting him with patents and designs for much improved versions of earthly technology, they form a company called World Enterprises and build a huge company and make a lot of money together over the next couple of years. During this time, Newton begins to develop a taste for alcohol, particularly wine and gin. Meanwhile, Nathan Bryce, a college professor, becomes obsessed with finding out more about Newton after encountering some of his company World Enterprises' revolutionary technology. He leaves his teaching job and begins to have a fruitful position at World Enterprises, all the while growing more suspicious that Newton is actually an alien. Bryce eventually confronts Newton about being an alien, and Newton confesses that he is and tells Bryce the whole story of his mission. When they return to World Enterprise headquarters, though, Newton is then arrested and taken in by the FBI, because it turns out one of his butlers was actually a spy and they had bugged the hotel room where he confessed all of his plan to Bryce. He's held for several weeks and grows frustrated while they run many tests on him, and then he's turned over from one agency to another, and due to poor communication, they end up running a test that leaves him permanently blind. The book then jumps to a couple years later. Newton is blind, depressed, and alcoholic, and has given up on his mission. Bryce finds Newton in a bar in a sad state. Bryce tracked him down after finding a vinyl record Newton made in his native alien language. Newton's lyrics were a message to his home planet saying that he is sorry and that he has given up. He's a tragic figure who succumbed to earthly vices and human emotions and was unable to help his kind. Sad ending for Newton. The end. I've been finding that a good way to talk about book versus movie differences by going over each of the main characters of the story. So let's start with the man who fell to Earth, the alien Thomas Jerome Newton. You can't talk about this movie without mentioning the fact that David Bowie is perfect casting for this role. I don't know if he's the best actor in the world.
Get out of my mind, all of you!
but he just embodies this character. Physically speaking, in the book, Newton is described as tall, thin, pale, androgynous, having weird eyes. It's basically David Bowie. And also, David Bowie pretended to be an alien known as Ziggy Stardust for a while, not long before this movie was made, so he just has the perfect resume to become this person. While Newton does definitely look very alien and strange in the movie, especially when he takes his disguise off, the book actually described him as looking weirder. For example, he didn't have any fingernails or toenails. That was one thing that pops in my mind. He also didn't have nipples. Those were fake nipples. They do show that in the movie, or taking off the bodysuit. This scene where Newton takes an elevator ride in the book was a lot more violent. He broke both his legs because he couldn't stand the slight increase in Earth's gravity when going up in the elevator and had to spend weeks recovering. In the movie, he didn't break his legs. He just kind of goes, oh. When Newton is recovering, he drinks gin with Mary Lou. However, in the book, he didn't start having a taste for gin until later in the book. Not that that's a huge deal. Just pointing it out. Another small difference for the scene is that in the book, he sent that character back to his hotel room to pick up some of his special alien pills that I guess help him grow accustomed to Earth's gravity and atmosphere or whatever. In the movie, that did not happen.
Do you want me to go down and get some medicine? Some kind of pill, maybe?
Just the water.
Another important difference to note for his character from the book to the movie is that the movie ultimately changed the reasoning behind his mission for coming to Earth. They made it so that his reason was to bring back a large amount of water on his home planet because of resource scarcity.
Why'd you come here?
Where I come from, there's a terrible drought. We saw pictures of your planet on television. We saw the water. In fact, our word for your planet means planet of water.
In the movie, I really wasn't crazy about some of the changes they made for what was one of my favorite scenes in the book when Newton was accidentally blinded towards the end of the story. Agency B didn't get the memo from Agency A that X-rays can leave Newton permanently blind.
There's no flash with an X-ray, Mr. Newton. You can't see an X-ray.
I can see X-ray.
So what does Agency B do? They do a full X-ray scan of his head, all the while he is screaming and begging and pleading, saying, I told you people, this will make me blind, you can't do this. He's being forcibly tied down to a chair and blinded by these people.
Please don't do it. You don't understand. Help me! Don't!
This was one of the most anxious and intense scenes in the whole story for me. However, the movie changed it from him going blind to him having his contact lenses, which were part of his human disguise, permanently burned into place.
No! They're stuck. I'll never get them off.
He wasn't blinded, but instead was unable to then take his contact lenses out after the X-ray scan. So I don't know. It seems like different stakes to me. It's not as scary. Professor Nathan Bryce was a big character in the story, and he played more or less the same character he did in the book as he did in the movie. However, there are a couple of differences to note. Personality-wise, Bryce in the book was a nerdy college professor science guy. He went to the movies and got dinner by himself, and he kept himself occupied with his thoughts and experiments and teaching work. The movie removed this nerdy loner part of his character and instead made him a womanizer. The first time we see him, he's sleeping with one of his college students, and then later it's shown that this isn't the first or last time that he'll do this. They also made his character more arrogant in the movie.
You don't even get it, do you? I'm younger than most of those kids. They're already middle-aged because that's what they're taught.
This scene here in the living room where Professor Bryce is taking secret X-ray images of Newton to try and prove that he's an alien in the book actually took place in one of World Enterprise's factories.
I realize you've made certain assumptions about me. I can see the flash of an X-ray camera. It's blinding.
In the book, a big important scene for Professor Bryce was when he and Newton went to a business convention in Chicago, and it was there that he actually confronted Newton about being an alien. In the movie, this equivalent scene didn't happen like that. Bryce still confronted Newton, but they had their important conversation at the shack in the desert, not a Chicago convention hotel room. Location change aside, I like the way the scene was done better in the book. I could also feel the tension building from the moment Newton invited Bryce to attend the convention with him, and the scene in the movie just didn't have the same weight. It didn't feel as special to the plot. Next important character to talk about from the book is Betty Jo. In the movie, they changed her name to Mary Lou. To me, the names Betty Jo and Mary Lou have the same feel to them. You know what I mean? They're both those southern-sounding double first name kind of names. So why change it? I have no idea. But okay, fine, she's Mary Lou now. Whatever, fine, cool. She was definitely an important character in the book. She was one of the main characters, but in the movie, I think she actually got second most screen time behind Bowie. The first time we see her in the movie, she's working as an attendant at this hotel where Newton falls down, but that was not her job in the book. I think she was like an office secretary or something. In the movie, she was the main love interest for the alien Newton. However, in the book, she was the main love interest for Professor Bryce. She did actually end up with Professor Bryce at the end of the movie. However, all the rest of the movie, there were no hints leading up to this, like this would happen. We never got a scene of them being flirtatious or anything like that. Physically speaking, in the book, her character was described as being heavier than the actress playing her in the movie. This might sound odd, but I feel like being heavier actually added something to her character. Maybe because of this, she lived on her own and was self-reliant like Professor Bryce, which was one of the reasons that you could see the two getting together. There were these like two self-reliant lost souls. They didn't really have anybody, so it kind of worked in the book. The patent lawyer Oliver Farnsworth has basically the same role in the movie as he did in the book. He was the lawyer that Newton teamed up with and formed World Enterprises, and they both became obscenely rich. But there are a couple differences to note for him. One is that, like Betty Jo, he was described as being heavier in the book than the actor portraying him on screen. Another difference is that in the movie, they made him having a gay relationship with this character here, who is not in the book. In the book, I don't really remember them going too deep into his character, whether or not he was gay or straight or anything about his personal life. It really boiled down to the movie just doing something to give his character some more depth, which is totally fine because it's not like this really affected the plot too much. Oh yeah, another big difference is that in the book he survives to the end of the story. However, in the movie he's thrown to his death out of a high-rise building window. Next, let's talk about some scenes that weren't in the book but were only in the movie. One of them is the scene where Mary Lou takes Newton to church. Another one is where Newton stops the car and gets out and takes a picture of this old building and then goes into a trance and almost passes out. The book does mention Newton reminiscing about life on his home planet several times, but it didn't go too deep into it or describe it very much, so I'm counting all the visually trippy scenes of Newton's home planet memories as made up for the movie. The movie also added this character named Peters, and I've seen the movie 3 times at this point. Who is he? What does he do? He works for the government. I think he's like a government agent. He's working against Newton and the company. I don't care. Another weird thing they added was when Newton looked out the car window and had this vision of these hillbilly settlers, or whatever they're supposed to be. This scene isn't clearly explained out in the movie, however, I think it could be Newton seeing into the past or having memories of a previous Anthean visit to Earth, and those were people long ago reacting to an alien, I think. Next, let's talk about some things that I thought the movie did very well. So the first 2 scenes in the movie were basically just like the first 2 scenes in the book as they happened. And that's always a cool thing for me when I see on the big screen what I pictured in my head when I was reading the book. Point of view shots like this, it's cool because it gives you the perspective of the alien visitor. To him, he's on an alien planet surrounded by aliens. For the most part, I think that the movie looked pretty good. There were a lot of well-composed shots and some visually striking imagery. One thing I always like to see is that they kept a number of small details from the book story. 2 little examples of this include how Newton would get nosebleeds on occasion because he couldn't stand the pressure of being on Earth because Earth's gravity was more than he was used to. Or how he has to drop some little alien aspirin pills into his drink to help him acclimate to the new planet. Most of the book story takes place in Kentucky, while the movie took place in New Mexico. Kentucky was a cool location for the story in the book because there really aren't many science fiction stories that take place in Kentucky. However, New Mexico was, I think, a cooler location for the story in the movie because the desert always has this slightly alien feel to it. The change really didn't take away from anything, and I think actually added to the atmosphere. Next, let's talk about some things that I didn't like about the movie. One was that I wish the movie showed more of the workings of Newton's company. We as the audience are told about the work he's doing, but it felt like most of the scenes were just people talking about stuff that was happening off screen. There were 3 different parts to the book. Part 1 took place in 1985, Part 2 took place in 1988, and Part 3 took place in 1990. Like the book, sometimes the movie would jump forward in time. However, there would be no fades to black, no crossfades, montages, or text saying X number of years later. Even as someone who read the book and knew what was coming plot-wise, these jumps in time in the movie would confuse me. A character would suddenly walk in looking 10 years older. Wait, why does she have gray hair now? Oh, this is part 3. Oh, okay. Like there was no really distinct way to know that we made a big time jump. I also don't think that the movie needed to be 2.5 hours long. I feel like I could cut out an hour of time and the story would still get told. There were a lot of shots that just people driving or getting places, entering, exiting. Like you could tighten this up a bit. In the book, it was clearly explained that Earth's gravity was more than Newton was used to on his home planet. He would struggle to walk well, hold himself upright, keep his balance. It's clear they meant to give Newton this gravitational challenge in the movie. And there was that scene in the elevator where he just crumbled under the additional gravity when it was going up, but they never clearly stated it like it was in the book, and most of the movie was Bowie sitting around looking pained, and if you didn't read the book, you'd be wondering why, because they never actually say it. The book was not sexy. I mean, it doesn't have to be, it's sci-fi, but I feel like the movie just added a lot of extra sex scenes and nudity for no other reason than just because. I feel like when a sex scene is done well, it shouldn't really feel out of place. It's kind of the same as like singing in a musical or fighting in an action movie. It should move the plot forward in some way, or we learn something, or at least not overstay its welcome. My biggest sex scene related issues were with Newton and Mary Lou. So they're the two leads, so if you want to establish that they're in a steamy relationship, sure, give them a good sex scene. Hell, make it two. But there was a long extended sex scene towards the latter half of the movie that I just couldn't wait for it to be over. Character-wise, they were trying to show that this is the peak of Newton's hubris and his madness, which I get, and that certainly does come across, but why did it have to go on for so long? I was amazed at how much I didn't care about this scene. Overall impression, what did I think of this movie? It was an experience, let's say that. It took me 3 sittings to make it through the first time I watched the movie. As someone who really enjoyed the original book and was excited to see the movie version of it, that should give you some indication of its general feel and pacing. This is definitely one of those movies that you have to be in the mood for, and you'll either love it or hate it. Maybe this is one of those things where you had to be there back in the day on some substance, seeing this in theaters. Not sure if it was the storytelling or acting or directing, but there were so many moments when I just didn't know what they were going for. Would I recommend that any random person go see this movie? Not really. It's not for everybody. I like seeing things because they're significant and influential and widely known, so I can understand myself what they're about. This movie definitely qualifies as being noteworthy, so in that sense, yeah, I'm glad I saw it. Will I watch it again anytime soon for fun? Probably not. As always, I'd like to end with some random fun thoughts that I had while watching this movie. So to start off, I liked the guy that burps at the beginning.
Hey, fella! Hey, fella! Oh, come here. Hey, fella!
I forgot about it each time I rewatched, and it made me laugh each time. I'm a simple man. Why did the Farnsworth character blow a bubble from his mouth here? Wait, they just drove from New York City to New Mexico? What? How long is that? It's like a 30, 40-hour drive. Am I going crazy, or does the Mary Lou character repeat herself a lot?
Oh, God. Oh, God. Are you okay? Are you okay? Lord, I never knew America was so beautiful. This is beautiful.
In this scene here, I've never seen round playing cards before. That's pretty interesting. Also, speaking of Farnsworth, his glasses make him look pretty goofy. Man, where can I get a puzzle piece silk shirt like that? You don't see those at Old Navy or Gap or something. There were also a lot of visually weird things going on in this movie. Like, for example, what the hell is this transition? One of the most bizarre scenes in the movie for me was when Newton was watching several TVs at the same time. I love this line where he's like, "Get out of my head, all of you!"
Get out of my mind, all of you! Leave my mind alone! Stay where you belong! Go away, back where you belong!
I don't know if this was their intention, but this abrupt cut to banjo music actually startled me the first time.
Mr. Newton, are you crazy?
The movie would have a lot of these real artsy, atmospheric kind of shots I think are supposed to be a metaphor for something, but I'm not always certain what. Like, for example, what is the shot with the cookies here? Or this one with this weird liquid? I'm really not sure what is going on. This is one of my favorite lines from the movie.
What are they like, your children?
They're like children. Exactly like children.
They're like children. Exactly like children. Very nice. Why did these guys have to put on the stupid helmets when they were killing Farnsworth? Like, what, were they afraid they were going to bump their head while they were murdering someone? It also makes it sillier that they're identical. I don't think I've ever seen someone stir their drink with a revolver before, so I'll give the movie that. Towards the end, when Newton is held prisoner by the government and they're running tests on him, what exactly are they testing in this part here when he's spinning round and round? What is that testing for? Or does it just look visually interesting for the movie? I don't know. Little Easter egg here, I spotted a David Bowie album in the record store scene. Well, that's about all I've got for today. If you stuck around to this point in the video, thank you very much. I appreciate you sticking around till the end, as always. If you are only planning on taking in one version of the story, I would say read the book instead of watching the David Bowie movie. I really enjoyed the book. I thought it was well written. It was from, 1963 it was from, and nothing in it felt dated, which I think is a sign of good writing. It was clear, nothing was confusing. I could follow the plot. Like, the book made sense. You watch the movie, a lot of it doesn't make sense, But, if a person watches the movie for the first time knowing nothing about the book, you're probably going to be going, what the hell am I looking at? If you're going to take in one version of the story, it should be this. Well, until next time, goodbye.